This is Mike from fearshop.com. Make sure you like this video and leave your comments. Also, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to set up notifications so you know when the next video drops. Let's get into it. Thanks for checking out this A Nightmare on Elm Street deep dive. I want to take you to a journey through my thoughts on the original Nightmare on Elm Street film from 1984. This slasher film did so much for the horror genre, and a lot of people do not recognize the value it has for the genre as a whole. Its film brings horror to a place where you cannot run away, your dreams. We're introduced to Freddy Krueger, and sleep has not been the same. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a 1984 American slasher film written and directed by Wes Craven and produced by Robert Shea. It's the first installment in the A Nightmare on Elm Street film series and stars Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, Ronee Blakley, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, and Johnny Depp in his film debut. The plot concerns 4 teenagers living on one street in the fictitious town of Springfield, Ohio, who are invaded and killed in their dreams and thus killed in reality by a burnt killer with bladed leather glove. While the plot of the film seems simple enough, it is brilliant. You can get away from Michael Myers and Jason Voorhess, although few do. How do you get away from a killer that kills you in your dreams? You eventually have to fall asleep, and when you do, you're in Freddy's control. Freddy Krueger is actually an amalgamation of Craven's childhood terrors. Freddy was the name of a bully who beat Craven up in elementary school, and his signature hat was based on one worn by a neighborhood drunk who scared Craven when he was young. A Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by real-life events. Craven decided to make A Nightmare on Elm Street after reading a series of LA Times articles about a group of teenage immigrants who, after moving to the US from refugee camps, died in their sleep after suffering from disturbing nightmares. Wes Craven already had a decent career up to this point, with The Last House on the Left in 1972, The Hills Have Eyes from 1977, and Swamp Thing from 1982. But earlier in his career, Craven left the academic world for the more lucrative role of pornographic film director. In the documentary Inside Deep Throat, Craven says on camera he made many hardcore X-rated films under pseudonyms. When his role in Deep Throat is undisclosed, most of his early known work involving writing, filming, editing, or both. Craven's first feature film as director was The Last House on the Left, which was released in 1972. Craven expected the film to be shown at only a few theaters, which according to him, gave me a freedom to be more outrageous and go into areas that normally I wouldn't have gone into, and not worry about my family hearing about it or being crushed. Ultimately, the movie was screened much more widely than he assumed, leaving him ostracized due to the content of the film. After the negative experience of The Last House on the Left, Craven attempted to move out of the horror genre and beginning writing non-horror films with his partner Sean S. Cunningham, none of which attracted any financial backing. Finally, based on advice from a friend about the ease of filming in the Nevada deserts, Craven began to write a new horror film based on that locale. The resulting film, The Hills Have Eyes, cemented Craven as a horror film director, with Craven noting, "It soon became clear that I wasn't going to do anything else unless it was scary." Craven frequently collaborated with Sean S. Cunningham. In Craven's debut feature, The Last House on the Left, Cunningham served as producer. They pooled all their resources and came up with $90,000. Later, in Craven's best-known film, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Cunningham directed one of the chase scenes, although he was not credited. Their characters, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhess, appeared together in the slasher film Freddy vs. Jason in 2003, with Cunningham acting as producer, while screenwriter Victor Miller is credited as the character creator. Later, in Last House on the Left remake in 2009, Cunningham and Craven share production credits. Craven's other influences include surrealist filmmaker Luis Buñuel and director Roman Polanski. Craven drew on their works, particularly Polanski's The Tenant and Repulsion, for the dream sequences in the film. In regards to A Nightmare on Elm Street, Craven filmed it on an estimated budget of $1.8 million. The film was released on November 9, 1984 and grossed $57 million worldwide. It made its budget back in the first 72 hours of its release. Nightmare on Elm Street was met with rave critical reviews and is considered to be one of the greatest horror films ever made, spawning a franchise consisting of 6 sequels, a television series, a crossover with Friday the 13th, and various other merchandise. A remake of the same name was released in 2010. All the investors at one time or another backed out during pre-production. The budget started off at $700,000, but they went a bit over budget. The film's credited with using many of the tropes found in the low-budget horror films of the 70s and 80s that originated with John Carpenter's Halloween in 1978 and led this subgenre to be called the slasher film. The film includes a morality play where sexually promiscuous teenagers are killed. Critics and film historians state that the film's premise is the struggle to define the distinction between dreams and reality, manifested by the lives and dreams of the teens in the film. Critics today praise the film's ability to transgress the boundaries between the imaginary and real, toying with audience perceptions. There are many psychological facts behind many aspects of the film. Look at Freddy's sweater as an example. After reading in Scientific American that the human eye has difficulty recognizing those particular shades of red and green side by side, they decided to pattern Freddy's sweater with those shades of red and green. Given that, looking at the sweater is subliminally unsettling. Of course, outside of the sweater and the hat, there is the iconic glove that Freddy tormented his victims with. The first time Robert Englund put the glove on, he actually cut himself. The glove was a product of Craven's wishes to give Freddy a unique weapon that was both cheap and easy to transport. But the director had a eureka moment when he read about early man's fear of bear claws. The ingredients came together to produce a glove adorned with fishing knives, later changed to steak knives for the shooting script. Can you imagine Freddy Krueger not being played by Robert Englund? British actor David Warner was originally supposed to play Freddy Krueger. He was forced to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. It feels like this worked out in our favor though. In regards to Englund, he based his performance as Freddy Krueger on the horror icon Klaus Kinski's performance in the 1979 remake of Nosferatu and musical theater star James Cagney. There is an elegance to Englund's movements. This is a funny story about Englund's audition where Englund rubbed cigarette ashes under his eyes while driving to the audition. It's an old theater trick that gives a shadow under the eyes. Englund dabbed a little ash under his eye, greased his hair back, and went in. He admitted he looked strange, but he did get the job. Originally, Craven wanted to cast a stuntman as Freddy Krueger, not an actor, but wisely changed his mind. Freddy was meant to be a silent killer. He had no lines in the film originally. It's hard to believe that was the original plan, given how many lines Freddy would ultimately have in the sequels. Even outside of talking, Freddy was way more dark in the original film. With each film, Freddy had more jokes. That was off-putting to some, but to many, it became the Freddy that they fell in love with. It is a shock to people who watch sequels first before seeing the original. In the original, the lack of seeing Freddy is intentional. The effects in this version are definitely something of note. The famous scene in which there's a geyser of blood shooting out of Glenn's bed was inspired by a similar scene of blood pouring from the elevator in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. To create this effect, the blood was created from 80 gallons of water mixed with red paint, which was then poured through a set built upside down. Overall, there were 500 gallons of fake blood used in this movie. The 60 substance that keeps Nancy from running up the stairs away from Freddy was a mixture of oatmeal and pancake batter. The epic first kill was Tina Gray being dragged up the wall and across the ceiling. This effect was accomplished by building a rotating room with all the furniture and cameras being nailed in place. The effect was expensive and almost did not get used, but the special effects team suggested they use the same room for Glenn's kill as well to justify the expense. To film Glenn's scene, 2 race car seats were bolted to the wall, one for the cinematographer and one for Craven, who were in 5-point harnesses. 300 gallons of blood had to come out of the bed. The grips were supposed to rotate the room slowly so blood would run down the walls, but the room took off in an enormous spin from the sudden shift of weight. Blood went everywhere, it hit every light and blew every fuse. In regards to Freddy's makeup, it took 3 hours every day to apply the makeup. Again, Johnny Depp made his film debut in this film. Charlie Sheen was originally cast to play Glenn, but he wanted too much money. The role ended up going to Johnny Depp, and a legend was born. Johnny Depp actually went with his friend Jackie Earle Haley, who was auditioning for the film. Depp was spotted by director Wes Craven, and he asked Depp if he would like to read for a role. Depp did, and he landed the part. Haley went on to play Freddy in a remake 26 years later. Wes Craven asked Johnny Depp to audition because his daughter thought that Depp was hot. Heather Langenkamp, who played Nancy Thompson, made $400 a day, or about $12,000 to $14,000 for her lead role. Langenkamp, a freshman at Stanford, had taken time off from school to pursue acting. She did a few commercials, a PSA, and a TV movie of the week, but it was a relative unknown. The teenagers were all unknown and were paid scale. Joe Garcia, aka Nick Corey, who played Rod Lane, was high on heroin in the jail scene when he talks to Nancy through the bars. Depressed and recently homeless, Garcia admits to having done drugs on the set. Meanwhile, Heather Langenkamp recalls, "On the day we shot the scene in jail, his eyes were watery and they weren't focused. I thought, wow, he's given the best performance of his life." Before Garcia got the role, Ralph Macchio of Karate Kid fame and Darren Dalton were up for the part. In 1991, then Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley proclaimed September 13th, which was actually a Friday the 13th, as Freddy Krueger Day, mainly because so much of Nightmare on Elm Street franchise had been shot there. But not everyone was pleased with the tribute. It's absurd and embarrassing, Tammy Bruce, president of the Los Angeles chapter of the National Organization for Women, told the Los Angeles Times, "Declaring a day in celebration of a character that exists to slaughter people is absolutely horrendous." While the mayor's office played up the fact that the day was named in conjunction with the release of the franchise's final movie, and that the fact this movie details the demise of Freddy Krueger certainly had something to do with it. Robert Englund also chimed in, stating, "We have to separate crime reality from movie escapism." Near the end of the film, we're treated to some great cat and mouse scenes where Nancy has lured Freddy into the real world where he is vulnerable. She sets up some snazzy booby traps in hopes to defeat the now vulnerable Freddy. It's always cool to watch a true final girl stand up to the murder and be able to hold her own. At the end of the film, Craven still regrets teasing the sequel, but New Line's Bob Shea insisted on having a sequel tease at the end of the film. Craven said, "I felt the film should have ended when Nancy turned her back on Freddy and his violence. That's the one thing that kills him." Bob wanted to have Freddy pick up the kids in a car and drive off, which reversed everything. I was trying to say, suddenly presented Freddy as triumphant. I came up with a compromise, which was to have the kids get in a convertible, and when the roof comes down, we'd have Freddy's red and green stripes on it. Do I regret changing the ending? I do, because it's the one part of the film that isn't me. A Nightmare on Elm Street spawned 7 sequels between 1985 and 2003, as well as a remake in 2010. The franchise helped kickstart the careers of directors Chuck Russell, The Scorpion King, Rennie Harlan, Cliffhanger, and Stephen Hopkins, Lost in Space, and screenwriters Frank Darabont, The Shawshank Redemption, Brian Helgeland, Mystic River, Ken and Jim Wheat, Pitch Black, Leslie Bohem, The Alamo, and the writing team of Mark Swift and Damian Shannon, who would go on to pen the Friday the 13th remake based on the success of their Freddy vs. Jason mashup. Including the remake, the 9 Elm Street movies have grossed more than $370 million in North America alone. That's more than $727 million if you adjust for ticket price inflation. That puts the Nightmare on Elm Street series between the Muppets and the Nutty Professor films in terms of highest grossing franchises worldwide. The movie's success saved the New Line Cinema from bankruptcy. That's how the studio got the nickname The House That Freddy Built. Overall, Nightmare on Elm Street is a seminal film in the horror genre that was scary. Everyone knows Freddy, everyone knows the 1-2 Freddy's Coming For You song, everyone knows the glove. There's no denying that Freddy is one of the greatest horror icons out there. If you have not seen this one, you have to. So that wraps this one up. I want to hear from you. Post your thoughts on this video and let me know how A Nightmare on Elm Street impacted your love for horror. That's it for this episode. Make sure you like this video, Make sure you share this video, make sure you subscribe, but most of all, make sure you keep it R.